Hello, my name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and I am a vegan confidence coach. I specialize in helping vegans eliminate people-pleasing so they can confidently be themselves and navigate the challenges of having a lifestyle different from the people around them. Here on my channel, The Confident Vegan, I share a variety of supportive resources, including inspiring interviews and recipe videos. Today, my special guest is Heather Zeitzwolfe, also known as Savvy Frugal Vegan. Heather is a passionate speaker and advocate dedicated to helping people transition into veganism and adopt a plant-based diet. Her mission is to disrupt the status quo and encourage others to think differently, particularly regarding veganism and ethical living. Heather guides people towards embracing the benefits of veganism and provides the tools needed to maintain a budget-friendly, cruelty-free lifestyle. She is dedicated to the animal rights, equality, and justice and inspires others to make compassionate choices that impact their health, society, and the planet. Heather is a GenX'r, doll collector, film geek, cat mom, entrepreneur, AI enthusiast, content creator, Tofu Wizard, and podcaster. She lives each day sharing laughter and positive energy. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I feel like I should have some of my dolls and some tofu and some other props here.
I love all the things that you're about. All the fun things. You bring a lot of fun to veganism and creativity, and we're both about being our authentic selves and empowering other people to be who they are. And I resonate so much with your messaging. I'm so glad we connected, and I'm excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You know, the vegan world, it can be very divisive, and we live in this world where everything seems to be like, everything's so like black and white, and it's so divisive. And as vegans, you know, we all share the same passion where we want people to, you know, save the animals, save the planet, eat better, but we don't have to be so like combative with each other. You know, our goals are the same. We may just get there in a different way. So, you know, there are the angry vegans out there, but they're not all angry. They're happy people like us too.
Absolutely. And, you know, look, I'm a vegan who lives with non-vegans, and that was part of what led to me creating this mission that I'm on. Is I know what it's like to be different, and, you know, sometimes you deal with challenges and judgment, and that's what held me back for a couple of years in fully embracing the vegan lifestyle, until I fully just stepped into myself and connected with that authentic part of myself that wanted to come through. And yeah, you know, we don't have to be all angry, and we can just show people how fun it is, and hopefully they'll join the party.
Exactly. And people don't have to worry about, we get plenty of protein. You know, that's always like, people are always like, where do you get your protein? It's like, hey, where do you get your fiber? You know, people don't ever think about that, but I know some people are having some, you know, gastrointestinal issues, and veganism can help out on that. Okay, so now I just got weird.
Oh no, but that's okay. You brought up a very good point, and I'm so glad you brought up protein, because people also get too much protein, right?
Yeah.
People think we need like oodles and oodles of protein, and I think on average, the average person needs around 50 to 60 grams daily, roughly, depending on your, you know, just various physical factors. But on average, that's really how much you need. And you know, it's interesting. I've been reading the book, How to Argue with a Meat Eater, which is really about having conversation about veganism, not really having arguments about it. And one of the things that he brings up in the book is that vegans, for example, like B12, because vegans have to pay attention to all their different nutrients, a lot of the time non-vegan people can be deficient in nutrients and not even realize it, because vegans are the ones who are paying attention. You can be a vegan or a non-vegan and be balanced or not balanced. So it's really all about what you're putting into your body. And, you know, just because you're non-vegan doesn't mean you're actually nourishing your body as well either. So
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's the junk food vegans too. And
yeah.
a lot of times that happens. People want to go vegan for maybe it is for ethical reasons and they're not thinking about the health concerns and they get into it. And a lot of times, like when I know people when they were younger, when they wanted to be vegan, their family didn't support them. And so they were just stuck eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches all the time. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, okay, you can do that for a little while, but eventually you're going to need something else. But but their parents probably weren't eating anything healthy either. So that was just like, oh, okay. It wasn't like, oh, we'll make a more variety of vegetables. So it is something like we do have to think about. And it is interesting how like doctors will give us more blood tests for different types of deficiencies or potential deficiencies. But I think non-vegans are not really looking at that kind of thing at
Yeah.
all.
And they could be deficient and not even realize it. So I think at the end of the day, everybody should be making sure they're not deficient.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited to have our conversation today. So the first thing I ask all my guests is, what is your vegan story?
Oh, my vegan story. So, I've told it before and on different podcasts. And so, I always try to like switch up some of the information. It's all the same, but, I'm trying to make it fresh. But I was born in the late 60s, and my brother in the 70s, he was a vegetarian. And that was like back when it was like, there were just like health food stores, and it was like wheat germ and carob and like that's what vegetarian alfalfa sprouts, it was like
Mhm.
all like that kind of like hippie weird culture or something. I'm putting air quotes around that. And so I grew up sort of exposed to that already, and so I kind of knew that. But like my mom, I'm not dissing people from Minnesota, but she didn't have the best variety of cooking. Like, so my mom like cooked with like everything seemed to have cream of mushroom soup. It was like that was like what we ate. So I didn't grow up eating like a diverse like palette, of like to our family. Like if we were going to do something exotic, it was Spanish rice. Like it was like, oh, we're going to Spain, we're having Spanish rice. Or like we'd have tacos and it came in like the box where it had all the accoutrements in it.
Mhm.
So my palate was, kind of like, I never really thought about food that much. And when I got older, I started going to restaurants. I was like, wow, there's a lot of good, yummy food out there. It was like sun-dried tomatoes. I had never had that. And I remember pesto and these things in the 90s. So it's like your palate over time sort of changes. And
Mhm.
I was not interested in cooking at all when I was younger. But as my palate started to change, I started like watching cooking shows. I was like, oh, those things go with that and this and that. And so I started having some interest in cooking, but my cooking didn't really take off until I became vegan. So my vegan story started off where my husband and I were like, it's coming on the new year. We want to get healthy. We decided, okay, we'll try veganism for like a month. And so we did the thing where we gave up I don't think we were really eating four-legged animals, so I don't think that there was anything there to like give up. But maybe it was like chicken one day, and then it
Mhm.
was like fish, and then I've been lactose intolerant since a kid, so it was like, but my husband loved cheese, so it was like, okay, the eggs and the cheese, and then we went out with the bang where we went and had sushi for the last thing was the fish. And then we're like, okay, well, now we're vegan. So it was like, like a 4-day process or something like that. And it was just supposed to be a temporary thing. And as it progressed, I started like, oh, I guess I have to cook some different things. And I was looking at different recipes, and you start to learn like, oh, okay, oh, there's egg replacer. Oh, there's flax seeds I can use for this. And so I started making the cookies and all these different things. But uh and it was actually pretty good. The food was getting better and better as I progressed. And then we went to San Francisco, and we went to San Francisco, and I looked at it was at a vegan restaurant, and I looked at a vegan leaflet. And now that time had passed, the meat had gotten out of my system. It had been long past that month. We'd like surpassed that and we were still vegan. And I looked at this vegan leaflet with a completely new set of eyes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had seen vegan leaflets before, and back when I was in college, I was studying advertising. I did like some fake PETA type ads and stuff. So I already knew about factory farming, but it was like eating meat was so ingrained in my culture and my upbringing and everything. It was like, well, how do you eat if you're not eating chicken? Like, it's like, how is that a meal? It's like, so it was just like, but then I had a different set of eyes looking at this. And then when you are open to looking at this stuff, you really start to see the atrocities of what's going on. And, you know, it's one thing you're like, oh, yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. And you kind of put it aside. But now I was able to be like, okay, I don't have any of this meat in my system. I can look at this and
Mm-hmm.
literally like digest what's in there, like all of this horribleness. And I was completely horrified. And I'm like, oh my God, that just solidified it right there. Then we adopted a cat. I had always been afraid of cats. I did not want a cat. And then I fell in love with the cat and I became a crazy cat lady. And then when I would look at my cat's eyes, I would see like other animals. I was like, wow, these are intelligent beings. Like I started seeing the world in a different way. And then I think the trifecta on all of that was reading the China study and knowing like, oh my God, if I wanted to eat an egg, like what that was going to do to my body. And I'm like, I just have nightmares. Like somebody fed me egg, like, ugh. And so it was like these three things. It was like, and not only was, well, maybe it was four, because then I started feeling better. I had always had stomach issues. So there's a lot of things actually, but seeing those pictures really like, it was like, okay, I have to stay vegan. Like it, sometimes people do it for health reasons, but once you start to like understand the
Mm-hmm.
impact on animals, then you're like, I'm going to stay vegan for life.
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate to a lot of elements to your story. Um, yeah, I was having a sensitivity to dairy. Like I was having skin issues and sinus issues, and I was reading about food and the role. I have eczema and rosacea. So I read how dairy impacts. I decided to try an experiment and I eliminated dairy for like 30 days. And within that first week, I really started to feel different, feel better. Like I realized dairy was making me feel bad in ways I didn't even realize it was making me feel. It was like my normal operating system.
Yeah.
And after that month, and then when I did have a dairy product, it was making my skin itch. I instantly felt like just didn't feel
Yeah.
good. I just felt gross from eating it. So I really started to minimize it. And during that time, I was looking up a lot of dairy-free recipes on Pinterest, and a lot of vegan recipes came up. And I was like, this stuff looks exciting. And I wanted to eat healthy food because there's heart disease and diabetes in my family. And I came across forks over knives and I was like, wow, this is like creative and healthy. And I started buying some cookbooks and I really found it like fun and actually made me a better cook because I was using spices I didn't use before and just made me creative. And then, so it was like, it started off with the health stuff. And then I watched the documentary Vegucated and it made me start to we all know where meat comes from, but we don't think that there's that cognitive dissonance. I've had that conversation before with other vegans. It's like we're raised, to just eat it. It's normal. And so it's we have that cognitive dissonance with it. And
you frozen. You were frozen for me for a minute.
Okay, yeah, it said my internet was unstable for a moment.
Okay.
That was weird.
I could hear you the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah, but you were frozen for part of it. So I was.
Yeah, I got like a weird thing. Okay, but now I'm fine. Okay, yeah, and your head was moving fast for a second. It was weird. All right, that's gonna look fun in the video. But yeah, so there's that cognitive dissonance that we've all had, and then when we start really thinking about it, kind of like what you were saying about looking at that brochure differently. I started like really thinking about it, and also just noticing my digestion felt better when I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
meat as well. It's very heavy, and I all of a sudden this part of me just lit up and wanted to be vegan, but I knew my family was not going to want to be vegan. And so I kind of like, shriveled up a little bit and didn't do it for like 2 years. But during that 2 year time, little by little, I started tiptoeing more and more and doing it, making more vegan food, and then, going to a house, and we went to a friend's house for Thanksgiving. And so I decided that's when I was going to finally try the veganism thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
put on Facebook, because that makes everything official. I was going to try veganism. And then I told a friend, I brought a lentil loaf, and I brought these fudgy cookies made out of black beans,
Mm.
and I survived. I got some questions, some mild judgment, a little more curiosity. People tried my stuff. They were actually thought it was impressive. But that was my first way of like, oh, I survived. And then after a few months, like 2, 3 months, I went back to fish because I was having some like health stuff. I was trying to transition, figuring out what the right things were. I went back to fish. And then after having some sushi, like a couple months later, I was like, I can't eat this anymore. Like something just, finally just was done. And, it started off for the health reasons, but once I really clicked and connected to the, animal piece of it, yeah, I feel like that's what keeps us committed, no matter how challenging it
Mm-hmm.
can be. And of course now it's so much easier to be vegan than like when you were talking about when your brother was vegetarian, that was a different time. And I feel like even in the past 10 years,
Oh yeah.
it's gone so much better out there. And yeah, you know what? It's okay to be different from other people. and I had to be okay with that. And now I'm glad that I've, made this change. I've been vegan for over 7 years. And you become aware of other things in life too. I feel like when you start thinking about your food, it impacts other ways you start thinking about things in your life.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And just to back up, like when I was a kid and I found out I was lactose intolerant, my dad was lactose intolerant, and he kept saying, like, that sounds like, all of the things she's describing, but they didn't know I like had to go through all these tests. And that
Mm-hmm.
was back when they didn't really think about kids having it. And so I lost a lot of school, and I'd be
Yeah.
homesick all the time. And then one of my brothers would come visit me, and to cheer me up, he'd make me cheesecake, and like I didn't know that that was making me worse. But once they
Yeah.
finally figured it out, then I was like, I drank this stuff that was like this like weird powdered soy milk. It was just terrible. Now there's like so many. I just bought pistachio milk. Now there's like so many
Wow.
delicious things. But and until I went vegan, though, I don't think I really was 100% dairy free, because there's all these traces of stuff that's in food that you never even know that's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I went completely vegan that I think all the dairy like finally went out of my body, because that stuff just sticks around. It's disgusting. And now, like, the idea of eating an egg, like I just get grossed out by, like, not just like the health things, but just the idea of it it's just disgusting. But again, it's just changing your that frame of mind where you grow up and it's like you see people eating food on a bone, and that's supposed to be normal. And then
Mm-hmm.
once you start to get away from that, you start to be like, that's a bone, that's flesh around that bone. Like it
Yeah.
start to click, like that's gross. But I remember that that's not how everybody is. They're not the same. So I don't expect everyone to think that same way. So I want to encourage people to eat delicious food like you're talking about, explore and eat different things and try different spices, and there's just so many delicious things out there. So but it's just a matter of like opening up your palate and trying new things. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
your taste buds change too. Like
Right.
everyone talks about cheese, and at first, vegan cheese did taste a little bit weird to me. And some brands are much better than others. But I would say after a couple of weeks of completely being dairy free, I got used to the vegan version of dairy. And so I just wanted to put that out there too, that your taste buds change and you,
Mhm.
you start creating a new normal for the things that your palate adapts to it. And
Mhm.
now the cheese, there's so many different vegan cheese varieties out there. Like there's no shortage of options to see which ones you like. And so, yeah. And so, what inspired you to get into the work that you do now?
Oh, yeah. So when I became vegan, you know, first, like I said, it took, a little while. And then I was like, I saw that leaflet and then I was like, God, I'm all in. I'm like, I really want to get out there and fight the good fight. So I had gone to some different demonstrations and I'd seen these radical cheerleaders for animal rights.
Mm-hmm.
And they were a local group they were like a cheer squad doing alternative, like radical cheerleading. And so I got involved with that. And I absolutely loved that. And we went to different rallies and did cheers and road cheers. But eventually some of the cheerleaders had kids and just things over time happen. And so I always was like, okay, I want to do something around veganism, whether it is helping out activists or it's everyone's always like, you should have a food cart, but I'm like, I'm not going to start a food cart. So I knew that I wanted to do something with veganism. So I've been an entrepreneur and I'm a CPA, so I'm an accountant, and so I've been working with creative businesses and I have a lot of vegan clients as well. So I give out a vegan discount and all of that. But on the other side, I've been wanting to do more activism. So
Mm-hmm.
that's thus the Savvy Frugal Vegan. So it's kind of taking like my love of like budgeting and doing things on the cheap and also being frugal and all those things, and then incorporating that with veganism. And I'm going to be 56 this year, and a lot of my friends are, let's just say, a little bit older in life, and things start to break down in your body, and people are getting, friends of mine are getting news like, oh, they're got like early onset of diabetes, or they got high blood pressure, or they've high cholesterol, or different things, and their doctors are saying like, hey, you should eat more plant-based food. And then they're like, hey, yeah, Heather, you're the one that's always talking about that. What can I eat? What is it? So now I'm like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
might as well bring all of my knowledge that I've gained over the years and bring it to the masses. So that's what I've been trying to do. And so I started a YouTube channel called the Savvy Frugal Vegan. And so starting with that, and then it's going to branch out to podcasting and speaking. And I've got things in the works to do a travel thing here in Portland, Oregon. So it's some kind of a vegan retreat. So I've got
Ooh.
I've got all kinds of things up my sleeve. Although I got short sleeves on right now, so it seems like a
Well, that
short, short things up my sleeves. But no, I've got quite a bit up my sleeve. So
that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hearing about those things when they come out.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting how we do other stuff, and then when we're like, we want to like bring our veganism into it. Like I was passionate about confidence coaching and helping people eliminate people pleasing, and I realized how that showed up for me when I first wanted to become a vegan, and I realized that there's a need for support because being vegan and around non-vegans can be challenging for so many different reasons. And so I had the vegan sip and chat community, which you were a guest speaker on recently. That was a lot of fun. And by having these monthly meetings, it's a way to bring people wherever they are in their vegan journey. Maybe they're aspiring vegans, veg curious, or just
Mhm.
seasoned vegans who just want support, and everyone just comes together and helps one another. And that's the key, is having the right support, because everyone's in a different place on the journey. And so it's I was last year is when I combined the things that I was good at and passionate about with veganism. And so it's interesting how we end up doing that. And it just feels really good and aligned when you start stepping into that. And you mentioned something a little bit ago about being saving, being frugal. being savvy frugal vegan, which there is this misconception that being vegan is too expensive.
Right.
and it's really the processed foods that are pricey. Listen, groceries are expensive whether you're vegan or not vegan. It's about being savvy, right? About your shopping. So
yeah,
what are some tips that you have for people who are looking to make their vegan grocery bill more affordable?
well, I will actually go to certain stores for certain things. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a one-stop shop. I'm just going to go to Trader Joe's for this. Like there's certain things I get at Trader Joe's. Not everyone has a Trader Joe's. We have a grocery outlet, which I think some people have, like Aldi, and they have
Mm-hmm.
a tendency to have like a lot of like, the vegan like cheeses and things like that. But then they also have like they had hearts of palm. Like I've been wanting to do something with hearts of palm, and they had it. And so you just never know. So going to places like that and exploring what they might have, because they have a lot of gluten-free flours and things that are
Mm-hmm.
normally really expensive, but you go to a place like that that's a discount place and you can get it much less. I'll also do things where I buy, giant bags of things, because I always know that I'm going to use things up. So, if you buy things in larger quantities, usually they tend to be a lot cheaper. And if you are making a lot of food, you're going to go through them. So I am definitely ready for the zombie apocalypse. I've got so much stuff in my pantry. So like when I buy jackfruit in a can, like I'll get a case of it or something, so just so it's cheaper. Or I get the soy curls and it'll be like a whole, instead of just one bag, I get like 12 bags. And
Mm-hmm.
they stay fresh for a long time. So it's like I know I'm going to go through this stuff. So there's like these staples like coconut milk and things like that. So I just buy it in bigger quantities. And again, you do have to kind of have shelf space for this kind of stuff. And also, it's some money out of your pocket up front, but then you have it. So like during COVID, I was like, well, I don't know when I can go to the grocery store again, but I know that I'm going to have plenty of food in this house to eat without having to go to the store, because I just keep things on hand. I do use coupons. I do look for things that are on sale. If you feel like, oh my God, I don't want to be the crazy coupon person, then just go to the self checkout and then just do it yourself. I always go around with all my coupon things, and sometimes I'll stock up on things that maybe I don't need right the second, but maybe it's something I can keep frozen. And I always look to see like, oh, how much is it by the pound? Like, oh, are the Gala apples less than the Fuji apples? Like
Mm-hmm.
which one do I have the coupon code for? And so I'll buy things sort of based on those types of things. I'll make those decisions. You can go to farmers markets. Some people are like, those are expensive, but it depends, I think, where you go, how expensive it can be. And I look for deals all the time. So I definitely look for the deals and then buy in bigger quantities. And part of it is also not letting anything go to waste. So the worst is when you go to somebody's house and they're like, you open up the refrigerator and they've got all this fruits and vegetables that are just like going bad because they're not using them. So
Mm-hmm.
just make sure that if you are going to buy perishables, that you've got something sort of planned ahead. Like, okay, maybe Tuesday I'll use the broccoli for this and the zucchini for that. And then, kind of have it a little, I mean, you don't have to have it totally mapped out on a calendar, but I sort of have it sort of fuzzied in my head of like, okay, maybe I'll do a polenta with this and that and on this day. And, so, it's that way you use it up. Like you shouldn't be wasting food. So, I mean, that's just terrible.
Yeah, I unfortunately sometimes get ambitious and I'll be like, I'm gonna buy all these. And then the week just gets busy for me. And so that's something I've been working on. What helps me in the past when I get into those phases of buying all this stuff because I'm like feeling really ambitious, but then my schedule gets away from me. It's definitely planning ahead and maybe having like a food prep day where, you know what, for
Mm-hmm.
3 and just make stuff ahead of time. Like I always one of the things I have a couple staples every week, especially if I know it's a busy week. I always make big salads and just have them in the fridge. And then my non-vegan family can add whatever they want to their own personal salad, and I can do my own thing. But we have the base salad already made, and people can just take what they want and do whatever they want to it. Right. And then I always make a soup. Like,
Yeah.
I always, even in the summer, like I get this dried bean mix. I soak it in the morning, and then like later in the day, I just dump it all in a soup. It's done in like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Just chop up what other vegetables, get fun and creative.
Yeah.
So those are like a couple of staples that I always have for like when I'm busy. Also, like there's like lentil pasta and chickpea pasta out there that and there's brand names out there that can be pricey, but then you can buy like the store brands, and like I know Trader Joe's and Aldi's have their own versions of it too. But then it's like another way where you can get protein. You can eat pasta that actually has protein in it and is much better for you than just, flour.
Right.
And so those are like some of my quick go-to meals. And also the other thing I like to do to save is like veggie burgers. You can make a veggie burger at home so easily. I've had a few recipes on this channel for different ones. And yeah, it's very easy. You just need a can of beans, a cup of oats, and then whatever seasonings, onion, whatever you want. Be creative, experimental with it. And it doesn't cost a lot. You get, I get usually like 6 burgers for a can of beans. And it's much healthier for you too. And then if you have a little extra I've used dried beans too, which are much cheaper than the canned beans.
Yeah.
And they're really not that difficult. It just takes a little planning. So what has helped me for sure with money and time is when I get a little strategic and plan things. That definitely makes a difference on reducing the waste, and just having like healthy food that's easy to have.
Yeah. And if, things start to look like it's going to go bad, just make that soup, and you can pretty much throw everything but the kitchen sink into a soup. And then, when you blend, like I use immersion blenders. I love those. And so I've got several different ones. And when you blend it together, you can get some really great, just flavors that if you have it in big chunks, you're not going to get that same flavor. So yeah, a soup is always a great go-to. Casseroles, you can always throw stuff into a casserole, and then just cook it off. Like if you feel like you're not going to be able to use it, just cook it, and then or freeze it or do something with it, because it is just a shame that things go bad. I mean, things like lettuce and all that kind of stuff is more difficult, and there are like people have some really creative ways of keeping this stuff really fresh. And I've tried that kind of stuff, but I always have like, and if I could turn something into a dessert, I'll do that too. So I did try avocado brownies. They were okay, but I think the black bean brownies come out better than avocado brownies. So.
Yeah, I think the brownies definitely require chocolate chips in them. When you put the chocolate chips in them, and then they're pretty good. Those are all great tips. And also stir fries. Like I do a lot of stir fries. And then also another tip that I have is I do buy a lot of frozen like berries and vegetables, because those are like flash frozen. Usually they have just a good amount of nutrients in them as well. So I do buy a lot of frozen stuff, especially if I know I'm super, super busy, because then I can throw it together in a random stir fry. I'll air fry some tofu, and then I'll stir fry some veg, and I'll just dump it all together, and it's tasty. And it doesn't require, frozen stuff is very helpful too, because berries can go by very fast. And so I have smoothies. So I have a lot of and a lot of the store brands, like there's the name brands of frozen fruits and veggies, and then the store brand ones are usually less. So I usually just stock up, or if there's a sale on frozen vegetables and fruits, I'll stock up on those too, because I know at least it's not going to go to waste.
Exactly. And the frozen, sometimes the frozen fruits, like I get the cherries, and they're organic cherries, and then organic blueberries from Costco, and they're in these giant bags and they last for a really long time. So you can use them in a whole bunch of stuff. You can make pancakes with them. You can make,
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many different things. And yeah. And, unless it's like in season and you know that you're going to use it right away. But, and then, I love being able to cook things quickly. Like I love my air fryer. I love my Instant Pot. I've got crock pots. I've got like every kitchen gadget under the sun. But then there's always it's always fun to like make something where it's going to take a lot more time. Now I've never made tempeh, although I've made my own yogurt before, and
Hmm.
I do have some sourdough starter coming, so I'm going to try and make my own sourdough. But so you can be a little get a little sciencey in the kitchen, but like there's a red lentil tofu that I've not made, and I want to experiment with that. So
Seen that recipe, and there's also one with chickpeas also.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and actually there's a store-bought chickpea tofu I've been buying recently that's pretty good, but I've seen the recipes for the red lentil tofu and the chickpea tofu, and it's something I also want to try because I feel like, I mean, a bag of red lentils is what, like $1.50, $2 tops. So you can get probably a lot of red lentil tofu out of that.
Yeah, and red lentils are, I mean, they're very good for you and they break down. So a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I don't like lentils or whatever, and but I always put those in my soups because it thickens them
Hmm.
up and they sort of kind of disintegrate and so you don't really even notice them. So you can put them in just about any kind of soup and
Hmm.
give yourself more nutrients that way. So I
And
love,
they
yeah.
also and they also make good taco filling too. Like you
Oh,
can take
right.
lentils and make like your own like vegan ground beef with them, with the red lentils or the brown lentils.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all tasty. So there's a lot of and that's one of the things too I love is like the creativity. And beans and legumes have a lot of fiber, which is important for your digestion and your microbiome. And so there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, you know, the protein that vegans consume, not the processed protein, but the regular natural proteins that are
Mm-hmm.
out there are just so much better for your health all around because of the fiber and other nutrients that they have.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, what are some other tips that you have for creating a food budget and sticking with it? Because I think I can say for myself, like my challenge is sticking with something. I'm good
Yeah.
at sticking to it for about a week or two with any kind of budget, actually. And so, yeah, budgeting can be challenging.
Yeah.
It's one of the most hardest, and money is such an intimidating subject for a lot of people. Like I've certainly had my challenges with money and just understanding finances and just navigating the challenges of life
Right,
come
right.
up. So yeah, what are some tips that you have for people who struggle with sticking with a budget?
Yeah, well, budget sounds like a diet. So people don't like budgets anyways because it does sound it's constrictive, right?
Yeah.
But I think first is just being aware. So especially with your finances, just like putting more attention onto it will help drive your decisions. So if you are one that tends to go out to dinner, start
Hmm.
writing down like how much you spent on dinner and then you'll be like, "Oh my god, when you compare that to how much in groceries you can get, I mean, it's like one night out going to even if it's just burritos. I'm like floored at how much burritos cost now in Portland. So
Hmm.
you can spend like upwards of like $22 on a burrito now. So it's like, okay, so that's
Wow.
my husband and I. Okay, so that's already $44. That's we don't have tax here, but then you add a tip, then maybe you have a beverage, you get the gasoline or whatever it is to get there, there's like all these different things. So adding all together, like, oh my god, how much in groceries could I get? So thinking, kind of change your mindset around like, people always want to have that quick fix of like, oh, I'll just go out and get this. Let's change it, like make food where you can get a lot of meals out of it. So
Hmm.
um get used to leftovers. That I don't know why people are so like down on leftovers, but when I make something, I make it so that I can either change up the leftover, like maybe I just like add a sauce to it or do something different, so you can kind of switch it around so it's not the exact same meal, or just use it as your lunch for the next day, and then okay, and then you'll have something else for dinner, or just have the same meal twice, two nights in a row, or do an alternative, or do a salad with a side dish, or so start thinking about like things that you could eat multiple times and that you could make on a bigger scale. So scaling is, I mean, that's always a great way to do it, but being as intentional as possible. So start to look at how much you spend on different things, and what is important to you. Like your health has got to be one of the most important things, because if we don't have our health, what do we have? So we want to keep ourselves healthy. So try to buy organic whenever possible. Try to avoid, things that have GMO, genetically modified. I mean, start to think about like, if you are saving, like people be like, oh, but the organic is more expensive. There's certain foods we can kind of get away with that are okay if you don't have organic, if you're not able to get the organic, but there are certain ones that you really want to avoid, because if it is something that is absorbing the pesticides, then just think about all those horrible things that are chemicals that are going into your body. And if we're trying to eat healthy, that's just kind of working against it. So think about like your doctor bills versus what you're spending, like how much you might have to spend later versus now, that sort of thing. And just look at what you can afford. I've seen people online where it's like, I'm going to do shopping, for my family for $1.25. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's not maybe the healthiest meal, but you could do something on a large scale. I mean, you can, if someone's coming over, like I can do like a huge pot of chili, hardly cost me anything, and I can feed a whole bunch of people. I call it Thanksgiving. I feed like over 20 people. They come over to my house and I feed them all kinds of food, and it really doesn't cost me that much, because I look to see like, okay, a bag of sweet potatoes, I can go to Costco and get a giant bag of organic sweet potatoes for $10. It's like, look to see where you can get these different things, and just be more intentional about your shopping habits. So and just start paying attention, and then like maybe you have to cut out Netflix or something, I don't know, to get a better meal.
Those are great tips. I have an expense app that I use, that I keep track of my different expenses. That's helped me bring awareness. So it's like, I used to go out for like, get a, almond milk latte or something at Dunkin' Donuts. And you think in that moment, oh, it's just, $6, $7. But if you do that every day, times 7, that's $49, right? So so now I just, now I'll get a coffee out maybe like once a week, just for like if I'm out and about.
Yeah.
But but it's just by paying attention, it's creating that awareness, because when it's that quick fix in the moment and we don't have it written down anywhere, it's like happens and gone. But then when you realize, because sometimes it feels like, well, where's all my money going? We're getting paid money. Where is it going? And yes, things are expensive, but also there's things that we can do. And by just creating that awareness, and it can be uncomfortable at first when you're actually like looking at it, but then you can make those mindful decisions. Maybe instead of going out to eat 3 times a week, maybe just save it on the weekend, or if there's a certain night of the week that's really busy for you, right? Mm-hmm. It's just being more intentional with your choices, and it doesn't mean you have to take it all away, but once you create that awareness of writing it down and keeping track, then you can make better decisions and be in control of the situation. Because I think a lot of times many of us feel like we're not in control of our money and our finances. Mm-hmm. And by creating that awareness, it can be scary, sure, but it also can be grounding and empowering, because then you're like, oh, now you have a physical representation of where your spending's going, and then you can make choices and changes with all of that. And then
can I add one other thing?
Sure.
So sometimes people will be like, oh, I want to make this recipe, and then they'll go to the store and they'll buy the stuff, and it's like maybe some of that stuff's not like completely in season, and they're paying a lot of money. So I always let the food at the grocery store drive what I'm going to make, rather than me like having a recipe in mind. Like I might have a few things, but I go there with an open mind of like, oh, what's on the discount rack? Like I always look to see like, okay, there'll be like a bag of like kale, and then there'll be one that's like $1.77, and it's like you look through and it's like, okay, the date is like the next day or something. But if I make it tonight, I look through it, it's not weird and slimy or anything. I'm like, okay, well, so it expires tomorrow, but it's totally fine, so like that, that's what I'm making tonight, so I just look for things. And we call it disco. They're the discount rack. So sometimes grocery stores will have things that like maybe it'd be a seasonal item. Like I think of these like it was for after Thanksgiving, it was these organic stuffing mixes, and they were really expensive during Thanksgiving time, but then afterwards they just wanted to get rid of them. They wanted to unload them. And I noticed like the date was like 2 years from now, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to buy like 3 of them and then have them on hand. And so then, so just check the dates, and sometimes the stuff, and like after the Jewish holidays, I was able to get matzah meal really cheap. Like you just look to see what's like on sale, and like you buy it up. So I'm all about the disco rack.
Yeah, it's so true. Everything, it's seasonal, and then it goes, when it goes on sale, you can buy it like 2 days later, the day after.
Yeah.
Halloween, like the Halloween costumes, right? Everything. You can buy up next year's costumes the day after, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, those are also some really great tips. Definitely. I like what you mentioned about the seasonal. There's been times I have had my mind set on making a recipe and then having to spend a little bit extra on an ingredient that, I didn't end up using all of. And so that's also a really, really good tip. And then to touch on the leftovers, chili is you can repurpose chili really easily. You can have chili one night, you can turn the chili into a burrito, you could put it on a baked potato. You can even take some of it and turn it into a veggie burger by just adding it with the right ingredient. Like you can do so much with a repurposed chili.
Chili mac. You can do
chili mac, exactly. So you could have 7 different kinds of meals, all from chili. So sometimes I'll roast a whole bunch of vegetables, and then I'll do different things with it. I'll put them in a salad, like sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts, and I'll put some in a salad, or then I'll make a quinoa bowl and I'll put them. So there's all kinds of really great things. And I think the key is just being fun and creative with all of it, and it doesn't have to be drudgery. I think we think about budgeting as just drudgery, but sometimes, when we have certain restrictions in place, it can make us more creative. Right. And so, looking at budgeting as like an experiment and being fun and finding fun and creative ways to save money, that's a different mindset shift. And it sounds more fun than, I got a budget, I can't buy anything, right? It's the same thing, but it's all about how we perceive it.
Right. And like going to like, I'll just say, quote unquote, like ethnic grocery stores. Like we have a Middle Eastern grocery store. I can go there and get all kinds of interesting things that I wouldn't either find in a let's say, quote unquote, normal, or there might be like a special aisle that might have a small section of that stuff. And it's really expensive. But if I get another one, it'll be less expensive. Like I shop at Asian markets all the time. And like at my Kroger store near me, like a piece of ginger is so expensive. But if I go to this Asian market, like there's like vats of ginger, and it's like way better looking, and it's like a fraction of the price. So it's just, you kind of have to shop around and just see like where you can find different things, and it's all like, think of it as an adventure, I mean, it's like, it's just fun. It's like, whoa, look at this, look at these interesting vegetables, explore different cultures and see what you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some spices can make something not boring.
Right.
Oh yeah. you have the right sauce, and it can make a quinoa bowl all of a sudden taste gourmet, right? Because that's what it is. Our taste buds like certain flavors, and so that's the key with all of that. Is just find things that excite you. It doesn't have to be boring. Well, Heather, this has been a lot of fun talking with you. What are some supportive resources you would like to recommend for anyone who's listening today?
Oh, well, you can get in touch with me. So you can find me on Instagram at Savvy Frugal Vegan, and you can find me on YouTube at Savvy Frugal Vegan. And I have a bi-monthly party, a Zoom party called It's a Plant-Based Party. So if you want to be on my show, you can just let me know. You can just hit me up in the DMs and let me know you want to come on the show. Otherwise, you can watch it. It's a live YouTube show that has all kinds of vegans that come on, and they share their tips and tricks and favorite recipes, and maybe it's like a new thing that they're using, like we had like different popcorn makers and different things.
Ooh.
So yeah, all kinds of things. So I think it's a great resource, so utilize that. Otherwise, there are so many great vegan cookbooks that are out there, and people that have been writing about veganism. And I actually just got this book in the mail today.
I've seen that one.
Yeah. How Not to Age. He also wrote How Not to Die. And but this guy, Michael Greger, if you haven't seen his videos, he's hilarious. And I think, all of this stuff is pretty much is free. And if you are suffering from any kind of diseases or something, go on there and he'll talk about it. And he uses real science to back up everything that he's saying. So you make sure that there's actual scientific evidence, because, a lot of times people say like, oh, well, I heard soy is bad for you. Well, okay, who did the test? Who was doing those tests? You always got to look at the science behind, like, who's paying for these research things. So,
right.
Whenever you hear anything like that, just be aware of that. So
it's so important, whatever it is in life.
Yeah.
You do your research, right? whether it's a news headline or information about diets and what you should or shouldn't be eating, it's always important to do your research and understand the whole full picture behind something. And there is a lot of science that supports eating plants. And people have actually been able to reverse certain chronic ailments like heart disease, cholesterol issues, type 2 diabetes can be reversed on diet. And so those are important things. And there's more doctors that are starting to share that information out there. It's still not as widespread in the medical community as it should be, I think, but it's certainly becoming more known, and there is science on there. So it's important to check out the China study, or I love the Forks Over Knives website. That's all based on the China study information as well. It's got a lot of useful, and that's part of the resources that inspired me with veganism. So but Heather, this was so great. I'll include all your social media links and your website in the notes below.
Awesome.
So if anyone watching wants to connect with Heather, you can easily find all of that below this video. So, all right. Well, thanks again for joining me today. It was so nice chatting with you. And for those of you watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.